So, Chris Bush, yes, that's how you say your last name?
Yes.
Awesome. So, Chris Bush is the author of The Millennial's Guide to Happiness. Chris, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because you can probably do a better job than I can, and then you can run with this.
Sure. Yeah. So, guys, my name is Chris Bush. I am a former obsessive workaholic, son of a German banker, turned happiness expert. I I guess I'll give you kind of quickly what I'm working on right now, and then I'll kind of go back. I'll Tarantino it, and I'll go back and talk about how I got to this point. So 2 years ago, I was working at a company called Epic Health Systems, doing pretty well. I mean, it's kind of considered like the Microsoft of the healthcare sphere. So great job to get out of college, making good money, cool apartment, cool car, lots of friends. Um, Things going really well, basically winning the American dream. And then I was diagnosed with clinical depression. And then fast forward 2 years, I'm now a happiness expert. I've published my first book. It's called The Millennial's Guide to Making Happiness. I studied positive psychology. I speak at large groups, corporate events, small things, really any size. That's why I'm happy to talk to you guys. Just spreading the word about the science of happiness. And just last week, 2 weeks ago, I was at Emory University doing my first speaking gig at a major university. So big milestone for me, and I'm now applying for TED Talks. So I've been called, part of being in my space is kind of, marketing myself effectively so I can get in front of more people and keep spreading the gospel of happiness, as it were. I was recently called the Dr. Phil of Millennials, which I thought was kind of nice. I don't watch Dr. Phil, so I have no idea what that means. But I've also been called the Malcolm Gladwell of happiness, and that one I quite liked. So I'm going to stick with that.
It's a good compliment.
Yeah. The closest, I think the most accurate I've heard is a Japanese sushi chef called me sexy Mark Zuckerberg. So that one doesn't sell as many books, but I'll stick with it.
That's a compliment.
Yeah, I'll take it, right? So yeah, part of why I'm glad to be here today chatting with you guys is I know that you're young, entrepreneurial-minded, open-minded. You're basically the perfect people for me to talk to because I think regardless of our age, but especially millennials, we tend to struggle with happiness. Happiness has always been this kind of ethereal idea, like how do we find it, or just is life really just about temporary highs? Is there some way to like build happiness? I don't really know. And I think what the pitfall I fell into is I didn't think or philosophize about happiness much. I kind of fell into that train track that most people do. It's sort of, I don't really know where happiness comes from, so I'm just going to make a buttload of money and try to buy it later. That seems to work for some people. And kind of that strategy just bit me in the ass really quickly. So it started me on this journey of finding what the real meaning of happiness and the modern world means. Now, I know some of you are thinking I've heard this before. This is a song and dance. We've got Eat, Pray, Love out there. We've got, all these kind of feel-good movies, but they're all kind of about a personal journey. They're a bit more philosophical. They're a bit more ethereal. I wanted to take a different approach and study the science of happiness. What are the scientists saying about this happiness idea? And I was not expecting to find the incredible, staggering, awesome stuff that I did. And it completely changed my life overnight. So I'll give you an example. I'll go back towards the beginning of my story. I was making a little shy of six figures, doing really well, loving family, great friends, cool car, great apartment, really had everything in life going for me and was still depressed. And I couldn't really figure out why. And it was a mix of confusion and guilt. It was like, I'm in the top 1% of the 1% of the world, and I feel just so miserable. Maybe I'm a total jackass for just not appreciating what I have. Should I be appreciating what I have? Is it just a frame of mind issue? So the only certainty I had in my life at that point was that I was definitely depressed. And depression isn't, as the media typically portrays it, it's not unhappiness per se. It's not sadness, it's numbness. So the way our emotions work is they're a bit like carefully calibrated scales in our minds, where we know that this external stimuli should make us upset, should make us sad. This external stimuli makes us fearful. This one makes us happy. So it's kind of a carefully calibrated system in our mind of emotions. And what happens during depression is that those scales basically get tipped over, and your brain isn't really sure how to register that stuff anymore. So I'll give you an example. After I was diagnosed, very clearly depressed on my mind, I got an email at work I wasn't supposed to have gotten that told me that my grandfather, my hero my whole life, had just been diagnosed with terminal cancer and had 6 months to live. In response to this information, any normal person would just bawl their eyes out and then ask to leave work and call his family. It just didn't register with me. I didn't care. Completely in and out. I was back to work in seconds. And yet, when I was driving home from work, I heard a weird song on the radio I hadn't heard in a while, and it made me just bawl my eyes out. I was basically just broken up here. So the remedy that the doctors gave me was 5 milligrams of Wellbutrin. And I'll never forget the day that my psychiatrist cut me off mid-sentence and gave me a prescription, like not even listening to a word I was saying. And I started taking this stuff for a couple weeks, and I had the luxury of not having to tell anyone I was depressed because I was still a high-functioning member of society. And that already opened my mind to a serious, serious issue that I think we as a generation are facing, which is that depression is easy to hide. So around 19% of folks around our age are suffering from depression, but that's so hard to really stand behind that statistic because so many people were like me, silent sufferers. I think I was probably I was depressed for 6 to 9 months before I was actually diagnosed. And the only reason I went in to get healthcare was because it was free under my health plan and it was on the way home from work. That's the only real reason. So I was depressed. I started taking these antidepressants. All they really did is further numb me. So if I felt kind of numb all the time and I had these little spikes of unhappiness, the spikes would come, then I'd take a pill and it kind of push it back down. I'd be numb again. So numb, but still high-performing member of society, was able to fake my way through everything, even fake my way in front of my parents, my girlfriend. And being the good little researching German that I am, I figure one night I should probably better understand this substance I'm putting in my body. So I went onto WebMD, I searched around and Googled Wellbutrin just to make sure I wouldn't, kill my mojo or make me grow a nipple or something. And what I discovered was a statistic that the CDC found, which was antidepressant use in America has gone up by 400% from 1988 to 2011. In the same period of time, our happiness as a society has either been steady or dropped by most measures. So I read this and I thought, very clearly this stuff is not the end all. It's not going to cure me. It made me realize that psychiatry and antidepressants are more like an anesthetic. They're not surgery. So who is the surgeon of happiness? And the answer is that we are. We all are our own surgeon of our own happiness. There's no cure out there. There's no pill. It's within our own hands, right? There's no ER for happiness. So that then begged the question, what is the cure for unhappiness, the cure for depression? What can we do that isn't just taking a pill and numbing ourselves the rest of our lives? So I started researching a little bit more into this positive psychology stuff, this study of happiness that scientists have been doing for the past 50 years or so. Maybe there's something there, right? And pretty quickly, I found another pretty staggering discovery. And here it was. And this became the basis of the rest of my happiness research. So from 1971 to 2008, positive psychologists thought that our happiness could only be temporary. And this was all predicated upon a study done in 1978 by two of the pioneers in positive psychology in America. Their names were Brickman and Campbell. And they first theorized that happiness is only temporary. No matter what great or bad thing happens to us, we'll always kind of come back to the same happiness level predetermined by our genetics. So it's called our hedonic set point, okay? Well, that's kind of depressing that we can't increase our happiness over time. It's always just going to come back to the same point, right? So they decided to do this landmark study in 1978 where they followed, some of you may have heard of this study, where they followed lottery winners and guys who just lost limbs or loved ones. Basically people who should be super happy and super depressed, right? They followed them for 6 months to see if anyone showed like measurable change in their happiness. And they all came back to their same happiness levels they had before the accident or the lottery win. So after that, they kind of went, oh no, this really sucks. We haven't disproven the idea that happiness is only temporary. So that created basically a dark age in positive psychology where people thought for so long, happiness is only temporary. This sucks. Let's go drop acid and go to Woodstock, right? So in 2008, though, in 2002, there was a Justice League of Positive Psychology formed that brought together psychologists from around the world to DC, and they basically like slammed the gavel down and said, guys, the idea we can't build happiness sucks. We have to disprove this theory and tell society that there's a better way to actually increase our happiness, right? Well, for 6 years, they couldn't really disprove it until the Germans showed up to the party, my people, yes, in 2008. And the Germans said, well, we've been measuring the happiness of 60,000 people in Berlin for the past 25 years. And yes, a good percentage of them just kind of showed a fluctuation over time. But a small contingent actually got less happy over time. But before we all get sad and depressed over that, let's jump to the fun part. Several thousand people showed a credible, gradual increase in their happiness over time, over 25 years. Now, it's hard for 5,000 people to fake increasing happiness over that insane span of time. Nobody had measured happiness for that long before. So this sent the psychology world into a frenzy. Everyone was like so excited. Oh my God, guys, we found out that we can actually increase our happiness over time. Now we just need to find out how. Well, this incredible discovery was obviously overshadowed by something else that happened in 2008. Anyone have a guess what that was?
Financial crisis. No.
That's exactly right. Thank you, Nate. That's exactly right. So while everyone was watching America's, the American dream built on financial wealth just capitulate on itself, what no one was talking about was that revolutionary discovery in science. I mean, guys, for happiness research, this was like they debunked the world is flat. This was like discovering penicillin, and nobody was talking about it. So I discovered this, and of course, the next question became, how did those people build happiness over time? What were they doing? Were they studying harder? Were they working out more? They had more friends? What was it? I needed to know this because keep in mind, as I'm reading this 2.5 years ago, I'm still depressed as hell and like in a horrible, horrible mental place. So for me, this stuff was going to save my life. So right away, I started digging into the stuff, the studies after 2008, where they started finding the things that basically build a happiness, like we figured out that there's a way to get jacked. What are the bicep curls of happiness, right? So one of the first things I read was if you volunteer a lot, it'll increase your happiness. We're not really sure exactly how, but we're pretty confident it will. Vanderbilt University put 84 scientific studies together that all proved volunteering increases happiness over time. So I thought, all right, so for the next 6 Saturdays, I blocked off my entire Saturday to go to a Habitat for Humanity build. And then I read another study that said, building relationships with your friends is going to build happiness too. I thought, okay, so I'm going to drag their sorry asses with me to the Habitat builds, and I'll see if this stuff actually works. And I started surrounding myself. There was a two-pronged approach for me to build happiness. The first was to eradicate all of the old anesthetics, because I realized that the antidepressants weren't the only anesthetics in my life. I had alcohol. I lived in Wisconsin. Like, we drank more beer than water. I had video games. Xbox One, PlayStation 4 had come out, and I was playing the hell out of those. I had bacon burgers. I had casual sex. I had marijuana. I had all this stuff that we can use in modern society to basically numb our minds so we don't feel bad when arguably sometimes we probably should listen to our brain signals. So cut out the anesthetics, feel a little bit of the pain, but fight it with this kind of nutritional happiness. So that was approach number one. And then replacing all that stuff, unplug the Xbox, go for a run instead. Don't wake up hungover on Saturday, have a couple drinks on Friday, and then go to a habitat build on Saturday. So kind of like evening out the like pleasure versus happiness. So it became more of a balanced diet. And what I found over time was this stuff works so incredibly well. The building happiness idea, it's not really like, it's not some evangelist bullshit. I promise. Like this stuff really worked. And I could see it in my face. I could see it in my friends' faces. I've got a copy of this is my book right here. And I'm pulling it out because, again, being the good little German that I am, I had to graph my happiness over time. And so try to do this right. So down here, this is me back at Epic, basically just fooling around, being kind of a jackass, paying not much attention to my happiness. And then this is me now. See, I'm meditating and I've still got a beer. And this is me balancing the stuff that kind of gives us those temporary highs, as the scientists call them, the pleasures, with the true happiness, also known as authentic happiness. So it's kind of that balanced diet of, yeah, I've got that temporary high. Man, that game is so fun. But I'm also going to go read a book. And man, that, going out partying with friends is awesome, but I'm not going to drink too much and be hungover. I'm going to go to Habitat and do something good in the world. So I realized that life was less about a temporary pleasure high and more about a 1-2 punch. But so at this point in my life, I'm not depressed anymore. I'm feeling a little better about myself. I feel like I'm better in control of my happiness. I haven't touched a Wellbutrin pill in probably 6 months at this point. My friends are happy. My relationships are really great. And it was at this point I felt comfortable sharing with my friends and family that I had been super depressed, kind of secretly. But then I kind of fixed myself. And I think for me, I didn't know any of the statistics about depression. I felt like I was kind of silently suffering alone. And I also felt like had I told anyone I was depressed, they would have been like, dude, you have a new car, you have a great job, you have nothing to be depressed about, you're an asshole. So I didn't tell anyone until I was happy, and then I could go back and say I was upset, but now I'm happy, right? It was kind of like, the analogy I make is it was like I told my friends I was stranded on the side of the road with a flat tire, which would have been really embarrassing, but then I followed up very quickly by saying, and then I figured out how to fix the flat, and then I drove off. So I started telling my friends, like, yeah, guys, I'm sorry if I wasn't very attentive. I'm sorry if I felt kind of distant or weird for the past few months. It's actually because I've been really depressed. But it's okay because I kind of figured it out. I kind of fixed myself. So now I'm kind of on a level playing field with all you guys. We can all be happy together. And they went, yeah, okay, great. We're all happy. But then something happened after that. My friends started pulling me aside one by one, out of like at coffee breaks, at work, getting me these very like intimate one-on-one scenarios and saying, dude, what you said was really brave. I think I'm really depressed too. I'm like, oh shit. Okay, dude, it's fine. Let's talk about it. I can help you through it, okay? And then the next day, someone else, hey, can we get coffee? I have something to tell you. And the next day, hey, we haven't talked in a few weeks, but my friend told me that you used to be depressed. Can we talk? And I started having conversations with dozens and dozens of people our age who are all kind of coming out of the closet of unhappiness. Like, dude, I posted on Facebook that I'm in Hawaii and I got 89 likes, but I've been depressed as shit this entire time. And what became clear to me was that millennials are suffering from this unhappiness epidemic. Now, not everyone's depressed on the level that I was. Some people were worse. A lot of people may be kind of dabbling in unhappiness, but could probably be doing a lot better. And I thought, there's not really a reason for this. The science is out there. Like, we have the knowledge, we have the penicillin of happiness. we now know how it is we can stay out of this happiness just chasm, right? And I know what it was because I used it to fix myself. And I now feel like I have this duty. I have to tell as many people as I can about this stuff. So that was when I decided I need to quit my job and study happiness full time. I've got kind of a grasp on happiness. So I've kind of got the 101 ready. But if I want to turn around and be, the Dr. Phil of millennials, be that trusted resource that can get people out of this chasm and prevent people from falling into depression like I did, I need to know a lot more. But I also need to turn around and share it with people as fast as possible. So I knew that I definitely had to quit my job, and I put a lot of my savings into travel. I wanted to make the eventual product, I wanted to make it interactive and fun, but also engaging from a very personal perspective. I think I had read dozens of self-help books by this point, and I realized that there's kind of two schools of thought, self-help. They're the kind of, well, I'll say three. So there's the really science-heavy stuff, like Mihai Csikszentmihalyi and the Positive Psychologist, and they're awesome, don't get me wrong, but they're a little dense to read. They're not quite as actionable. They're kind of just like textbooks. And then there are guys who talk very, very loosely about their experience and kind of how they, things went so well for them because they went on this magical trip to Africa. And that's great, but it doesn't quite give the actionable advice that people need. And the third category I just thought of was the total bullshit artists. Like, don't get me started on Eat, Pray, Love, but we don't all, I'm not even going to go into it. So what I wanted to do was capture the science, but also back it up with some amazing stories. And there's some I could pull from my life, but I'm just a healthcare IT guy who's been living in Wisconsin for the past 2 years. What great stories do I have, right? So I wanted to travel the world and start talking to other really happy people. Like, hey man, I read this study. Can you support it? You seem like a really happy guy. What stories do you have to share? How about you? So I traveled to China and Hong Kong and Vietnam for about 2 months. And then I went to Mexico and Cozumel. The reason I chose Mexico was because despite all the violence and all the horrifying things you hear in the news about the north of Mexico, Mexico as a country traditionally ranks higher than us in the UN World Happiness Report. And I went to southern Mexico and I figured out a few things, but then a lot of people were saying the happiest place in Mexico is Cozumel. So I went straight there, and it totally was. Those people down there on like the crack of happiness. It's awesome. And I learned so much down there. And I'll brief tangent and talk about a story from my time in Cozumel that will kind of illustrate the kind of stuff I was picking up from people. I hopped in a cab after I got off the boat, and the guy was just kind of rattling about all this stuff, but he just seemed like such a vivacious, beautiful, happy person. So I was so far in my comfort zone by this point that I just started asking people. I was like, Luis, you seem super happy. Why is it? I'm just asking people around the world why they're happy and what can you share with people who may not be as happy as you. And he said, it's just the reason people in Cozumel are so happy is because we're a giant family and everyone has a sense of belonging here. But if we're going to continue this conversation, it's going to be over tequila. So he drives me, he doesn't even ask me where I'm going. I realize I've just been driving for about 3 minutes at this point, and he drives me to his cousin's tequila farm. His cousin rants to me about the evils of Jose Cuervo. And then he pours me this tequila glass. He puts a paper cup underneath this sugar straw, and the tequila is dripping down the straw. It's capturing the exact amount of sugar it needs and dripping down into this cup. And he says, that's the best tequila you're going to have in my entire life, your friend. That is happiness. So that's awesome, but I kind of need more than just your awesome tequila to put in my book. And then they talked about family and, again, a sense of belonging. And then I ran out of money. So I realized I wasn't going to be able to go. I had some money left, obviously, but I wasn't going to be able to go to Denmark or Sweden because they have some of the strongest currency in the world. To spend a month in China cost me about $1,800. And to spend that length of time in Denmark, like even hostel hopping would be about $4,800. So I decided technology is awesome. I'm going to do the rest of my interviews off of Reddit, off of online blogs. I even went on Tinder and I changed my location. And as I matched with girls, I just went like, hey, this is kind of weird, but I'm actually just studying happiness. What was it? What is it about this? And you're riding horses in this picture. Like, what brings you happiness about that? And turned out to be one of my best resources because girls were so staggeringly surprised by that opener that they were super open. A few of them actually met with me in person just to chat about happiness. So I think all in all, for about a year, I studied about 1,500 hours of positive psychology, neuroscience. I'll show you a few examples. So these are a couple of my favorite books. This is Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. The backbone of the book is about this concept that I talk at length about in my book. Flow is the highest state of mind that we can naturally achieve. In short, you guys are familiar with getting in the zone. It's the scientific term for getting in the zone. Basically, when you focus on something, focus isn't a binary thing. It's not focused or not. It's kind of gradual. It builds on itself. So the more that you focus on a single activity, the more your brain starts to release all these chemicals into itself. And it actually shuts down different parts of the brain so it can focus all of your computational power on just the parts that need to focus. That's why you see Olympic athletes will break their bones and not even feel pain. And you just see this insane level of focus in some of our greatest athletes and orators. And it was something that I talk about. The book is really thick, but basically what I took from this was I kind of extrapolated just the pieces that we need to know and how to engage flow more often. And I actually used it to write my book for about 12 hours a day. That's how I drafted the first entire book in about 2.5 months. And my other favorite book, Blink, Malcolm Gladwell, not really a positive psychology book, but basically the book is about when and how to trust your gut. And my takeaway from that was a lot of happiness derives from just leaping outside of your comfort zone and having fun with the uncomfortable and just learning constantly. So anyway, so I wrapped up all that positive psychology with all these awesome stories I collected from, I would estimate, about 600 millennials from 31 different countries I talked to. And all of that, then I sat down last winter and banged out this thing. So where that brings me to today, the book, the way I wrote the book was I funneled down all those things, like the exercises of happiness, the things that actually worked, that I gathered from around the world, the things that worked to build that happiness over time. And each of those became the headings to my chapters. So the way it's structured is I'll talk about a story that supports the science, and then I'll go into the science itself. And I'll actually, this book has 172 scientific papers referenced in it. And then probably add in a goofy, embarrassing personal anecdote from my life. Rinse, repeat. And then each chapter has these kind of cliff notes at the end that talks about here's exactly what you need to know and how to start using this stuff every day. You know, it's not like this radical diet. It's not like the veganism of happiness. It's like, you know, I still love caffeine. I have a pyramid of these on my desk. You know, I still go out with beers with friends all the time. I still play video games, but it's about understanding how to create that balance in your life. And the return on investment for understanding and building happiness is just staggering, guys, really, truly life-changing. That's why I've dedicated my entire life to getting it out to people. So I've done a lot of talking at this point. What questions do you guys have?
I actually have one that came up as you were talking about Malcolm Gladwell and some of these people's. What do you think about Simon Sinek's millennial question, his answer to the millennial question? If you're familiar, it blew up, and he was talking about the secret, basically, to being happy for millennials. What do you think about that in your research and your writings?
Yeah, I think he made a really amazing point about pleasures. He didn't call them pleasures, as a lot of the community does, but it's basically what he was talking about. Um, how if you grew up in the 1940s, you had access to cigarettes, and everyone loved cigarettes. They're so great. They're such a great instant happiness kick, right? And then they found out that cigarettes were killing us. So they went, oh, no more cigarettes. Well, that was a baby boomers kind of finding out one thing that doesn't make us happy. We're going to be known as a generation that finds out that uh, all pleasures don't make us happy. And social media is going to be a huge part of that. As Simon said in his talk, he said, we now have an age limit on cigarettes. We do not have an age limit on social media, which releases the exact same chemicals, and it's more readily available. And it's almost in a way like I almost feel like it was easier to quit cigarettes in 1960s because your friends, I don't know, maybe they wouldn't pressure you as hard, but it's hard to quit social media because it's kind of like this thing, and people have to write these long essays about why they're quitting it, like it's this big deal. And yeah, I think he's a hero of mine, Simon Sinek, and he really hit the nail on the head with the millennial question. Part of why I really admire Simon Sinek is he doesn't have an agenda. He exists to inform people. He just wants people to make informed decisions about their lifestyle. So my philosophy is I'm going to be the most effective and most passionate at what I'm doing if I remember that my core philosophy is just to inform people.
Thanks for the answer. Appreciate it.
No, thanks for the question.
Can you talk a little bit about your journey after you published your book, like developing your brand and developing a presence and establishing yourself as an authority on happiness? Like,
yeah,
what
absolutely.
worked and what didn't?
Yeah, definitely. I'll start with how I actually raised the money to publish the book. So all in, to do a professional job of this is about $12,000, and that doesn't include all the beer and pizza and caffeine I consumed while writing it. And the way I raised the money was a Kickstarter campaign. So that was a huge undertaking for me already because I hadn't raised more than $50 since Jump Rope for Heart in third grade, and I failed. I raised $34 from my mom, and here I am trying to raise $14,000. My target was $12,500 for a book that nobody knew I was actually writing. I kind of did it in a cave, and how am I going to market this thing? I don't even know how to use Kickstarter. Am I going to be overt about how I was depressed, or did I just kind of want to just say, I had no idea how to do it. So from a Kickstarter perspective, what did work was speaking directly from the heart. Simon Sinek talks about the why, answer the why. The reason Apple is a thought leader and why they always win our wallets and our minds and our hearts is because they talk about why, and they hire passionate people. And I just talked about the why I wrote the book. I didn't try to sell it to people. I just sold the mission to my people. So the mission was, hey guys, welcome to my Kickstarter. And you guys can see the link. I'll share the link after our call here. And you can see my video on my main webpage. It's just chrisbutsch.com. But yeah, that big video that pops up is my Kickstarter video, just shaved down a little bit. It kind of cuts out the Kickstarter mechanical stuff. It's about 3 minutes long. But I just told people why I wrote it. And I thought if that's not good enough for them to support me, then I should go back to the drawing board because my why just isn't strong enough on its own. It should be. And thankfully it turned out to be. So it worked was sharing the why with my first degree connections. So that's my friends, family, my former bosses, former coworkers who I really trust, like people I would have over to my house for a beer. Like that was my first degree. And then after that, it became marketing to the second degree connections, like my college roommate, my college professors, high school buddies, coworkers I wasn't as close to. And then became the third degree connections, kind of their connections, and getting them to help me spread the message on social media. So your passion, that powerful message that you can give people, is going to have that trickle down effect. But the second people think you're just in it for the money, or you're just trying to get a buck out of them or become the next billionaire, they're going to turn their back on you, especially millennials. Because as we know, if we're going to give somebody our money, it's going to be for a good reason. And like, I was actually asked today, because I interview millennials on a radio show in Atlanta called Atlanta Business Radio. And I was asked to interview a guy who his mission was like, I'm going to help people go to college for free. And I thought, that's great. I'm not going to contact him, but I'm first just going to research him a little bit. And it turns out all he's really doing is connecting people with scholarships, but he's charging us for it. He's charging thousands of dollars to help people apply for scholarships. And I thought, what a catastrophic jackass, right? That's not a mission that I can get behind. I'm not going to give you a dime, and I'm definitely not going to give you airtime. So I know you guys are budding entrepreneurs, and I want you, my advice to stay successful, because my why, nonfiction books do not make money on Kickstarter. You will not make money selling a nonfiction book on Kickstarter. But I rose to #1 in my category for the month of November. And I largely attribute it because of my why. I just answered the why, and that should carry its own. So as you guys develop your own missions, your businesses, never forget your why. And if you do, watch Simon Sinek's TED Talk. It's called Great Leaders Start with Why, I believe, something like that. And that's what really, that idea, that message revolutionized my mission. So that was the money, right? So the campaign is successful. I had 243 backers give me $13,600. Awesome. So the next part became the actual printing and the actual use of resources. So I had gotten to that number because I partnered with a company called BookLogix based out of Alpharetta, Georgia. And BookLogix is a very unique hybrid publishing firm, because in the publishing industry, you kind of have two options. You can self-publish yourself. Amazon will do that for you. It's inexpensive, but the problem with this is you're going to be thrown in with millions and millions of other, I think like 300,000 self-published books are published every year. So you're it's a great way to get a book out, but it's hard to build prestige and get your way to the Ben Franklin Awards or to the New York Times that way. If you want to get more of the prestige behind it, then you have to go traditional publishing. And that sucks even worse, because traditional publishers, they will only give you the time of day if they think they can make millions of dollars off of you. And that's not an exaggeration. So these guys will, in the 1990s, it was kind of more people were buying books. You can make more money off of books. But now it's sort of, they won't talk to you unless you already have like a PhD and 1 million Twitter followers, and you've already published 19 other books that each made $1 million. It's extremely hard to traditionally publish a book. It's not impossible, but I would disincentivize all of you, blatantly disincentivize you from doing it, because they will rob you of your creative control. They will take the money, and they will direct your personal brand for you. You guys are here because you are entrepreneurial minded, and a traditional publisher will not let you keep that awesome creative freedom that brought you here. So the beauty of BookLogix, and what I hope to see more firms doing this soon, is they offer a hybrid model where they will self-publish your book, but only if they like it. So what does that mean? When you approach the indie bookstores, when you approach the Barnes and Nobles, when you approach the New York Times, they will give you the time of day because they know BookLogix is reputable and they only print good stuff, right? So keep an eye out for those kind of hybrid publishing options if you have it in your mind to publish something awesome. If it's something shorter, if you want to publish like a 50 to 100 page book and don't want to deal with all the actual paperwork and the literal paper, Amazon has awesome options for that too. It's very painless. Places to invest: a book cover designer. Do not have your book cover designed on Fiverr. That's a huge, huge pitfall a lot of people make when they're trying to get their self-published book out there. it really undermines their credibility when people can instantly tell they have a cheap cover, and the cover indicates the quality of the rest of the book, right? So my cover was designed by a woman who did Tucker Max's books, I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell. And I found her because I was reading a blog post by James Altucher. He's a very famous published author. And and he made, I think, like $500,000 off of his most recent publishing contract, and even with that considered, he said never ever publish a book, self-publish. So anyway, I found her through his blog post, and she was worth every penny. She's not cheap, but pay good money for a cover designer if you choose to do anything with a cover. So all in, everything cost me about $12.5 and change. And then I actually got to cut a lot of corners on shipping my books after the orders were made, because I heavily advertised the book to my network in Atlanta. And I did Facebook targeted marketing to Atlanta because I knew that I could hand deliver all those books myself. Because to ship a book like this with decent padding, it's about 14 ounces. It'll cost you $7. It's not cheap. So for every book I could deliver myself on $1.25 of gas, saved me, the net difference. I think my parting words on that question are, if you choose to traditionally publish a book like that, it's a lot like starting a company, because you'll have to build a team, you'll have to network, you'll have to market yourself, brand yourself, build a website, and cultivate a following, and also just create an extremely well-rounded, beautiful, passion-driven product. So the book itself is obviously not going to be lucrative for me, but it taught me more than the most valuable teaching experience in my entire life, Vanderbilt education included in that.
That was a fantastic answer. Tons of really tangible advice for us to take away. That was awesome. Thank you.
I'm happy to help.
What about building a brand in terms of like getting speaking engagements and developing a following through your website, like becoming a presence in and of yourself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely a challenge that I'm dealing with right now, but I'm learning things very quickly. So I went from, who's this, guy with this, people don't know, like, it's hard to explain my book is published, so people automatically think it's just self-published and I'm just some yuppie who wrote a book on happiness like a million other people. So how do I go from that guy to being formally asked to guest lecture at Emory twice in one day? Networking is really the key. Being very open that what you're looking for is speaking engagements. You don't want to take what I call the Kanye approach. The Kanye approach is where you show up and you think you're hot shit and you're just like, oh, it should be grateful I'm even here. And people hate millennials who do that. Like, it's already so easy to hate us from other generations. Don't give them any more reasons. Humility and networking. Again, people will help your mission if they like your mission. If your mission is to sell a lot of books, they will not help you. If your mission is to make money, they'll not help you. If your mission is to talk at TED, that's a little better, but they're probably still not going to help you. If your mission is to solve a problem, especially a problem that they or the loved one that they have is feeling, that's something they will believe in and they will invest in. So I learned this by doing it right and doing it wrong. The wrong thing to do is to comment to networking events and say, I'm trying to sell books, I'm trying to get on the stage, I'm trying to get on the TED stage. The other wrong thing to do is to say, yeah, I'm trying to spread happiness through science, and here's my mission statement. Why is that wrong? The right thing to do is both, right? So you want to get your mission statement out very clear. You want to follow up. You want to get their contact information. You want to listen to them. You want to create value before you ask for it. And then you ask for the help. So I'll give you a very concrete example. This is actually based off of how I got the lecture at Emory. I went from meeting this guy, Dr. Sam Shribi, who's directly connected to Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, and the Dalai Lama. I went from meeting this guy at Atlanta Tech Village to him asking me to talk to his students within about 90 minutes. Here's how I did it. So when we first met, I told him my journey. I gave him kind of the short version of what you guys heard at the beginning of this. And he acted engaged and he was interested, but I didn't ask him for anything at that point. And then at that point, I asked him about his mission. What is he trying to accomplish? Who's he working? What is he doing? Oh, well, I've got all these students, all this stuff. And then it became more of just a conversation about learning about each other before any value was really introduced either way. And I thought the best thing I can do for this person in the room to improve their life, to illustrate my mission, is to solve his problem. And I'm going to illustrate to him I'm going to pull something out of kind of my playing cards of happiness. I'm going to give him kind of some free advice from stuff that I've learned. And I talked about the difference between wealth and your bank account, and how wealth is one of only six. Your bank account is one of six aspects of your wealth. And people who think that it's just about your bank account are actually losing out on the other five aspects of their wealth. That's why they become so unhappy. And I'm going to pull up. I illustrated this concept on for volume 2 of the book, which is actually already drafted. And I'll give you guys a quick preview. So see if we can see that. Yeah. We zoom in a little bit. So I guess if that comes in backwards, basically is it backwards for you guys?
No. Well, we can read the writing the right way, so I assume that means it's forwards.
Cool. Yeah, so basically what I did is I showed him the graph of my happiness, my wealth, which sucked back at Epic. My wealth was awful because all I had was money. I didn't realize that I was trading all of my time, talent, wisdom, health, and my network to get more money. And my starving musician buddy Joe back in Nashville, he's broke, but he had all those other aspects of his wealth I didn't have. So this is Joe. And there's, Joe rocking it. So anyway, that's a tangent. That's what I was explaining to Sam, creating value for him, right? And then it became kind of still in that frame of mind, how do I continue to create value for him? He has students, he has millennials. He's made clear at this point that he loves to bring in guest lecturers. So it's a careful dance at this point, because you can say, oh, I'd love to come guest lecture. That kind of puts him in a tough spot. So instead, the way I framed it was, if you think I'd be in a position to create a lot of value for your students, I would love an opportunity to come speak. Notice the difference there. Hey, I'd love to come speak. That's what somebody who just wants to say, I spoke at Emory, would say. Hey, I know that you have a lot of students. If you think I'm positioned to bring them a lot of value, I'd love an opportunity to do that. That second phrase is about, hey, I think I'm positioned to help. Will you let me help, right? So that was, and that was the start of a really awesome relationship. Sam has been so awesome to me. His students grilled me, but it was great. Like I do lectures in front of baby boomers a lot because they want to know about millennial psychology. And they're like, oh, they kind of have this like, oh, good for you kind of vibe. Like, oh, you're so awesome. Like millennials, like you're not a shitty millennial. Like it's such a backhanded compliment, but they're nicer in the room. And then I go talk in front of millennials and it's different because while I speak their language, our language, you guys, I shouldn't say you guys, but we are very critical of all information, which is great. So they're grilling me and making sure I wasn't just another eat, pray, love evangelist of bullshit happiness theory, and really got to the core science and shared with them something they hadn't heard. So I had, I'm trying to think of the good questions that they asked. I had a Chinese student over there ask me, do I think that the smog is impacting the happiness of China? And I said, absolutely, 100%. And here's why. So you've got Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's one of the most enduring theories of psychology, positive psychology especially. This guy was just way ahead of his time. So Abraham Maslow, 1943, theorized that before we can really reach higher fulfillment, a higher level of being, we have to take care of the basics, right? We're not going to feel good if we get a promotion if we're starving to death. It's like, I don't care, give me a potato. Here is hierarchy of needs. So what happens to a society that can't provide basic needs to its citizens, that literally, I'm very sad to say, can't even provide oxygen to its children? Children in Beijing play in giant inflatable domes because they can't breathe outside. So what happens when you live in that kind of society? Well, there's no circumventing basic needs. You have to take care of your basic needs before you can reach higher fulfillment. So you're seeing depression, you're seeing suicide rates go up catastrophically in China because people were coughing their lungs out. They can't, on even a micro scale, athletes can't train because they can't run. People, their health is slowly siphoning from them, and they don't have the socioeconomic means to escape the smog. How can you build happiness in society like that? Where I found happiness in China, it's a very, very polarizing society. Where I found happiness in that country was in the countryside, where things were still really simple. After the Mao era, there was a mass migration of humanity to the cities because that was the only place where you could make money after an entire country rapidly industrializes like that. There's no money in farmland anymore. So every able-bodied person had to move to the city, work there 11 and a half months a year, and send all the money home. So you have an entire generation of Chinese children right now being raised by the grandparents who, if they're lucky, will see their parents once a year. This past year, the traffic during the holiday season, the traffic was so bad that a lot of the migrant workers couldn't even get home. They just sat in traffic. So very, very sad situation over there. I have friends in China I talk to regularly because they're kind of on my ER list, kind of, how do I build happiness so I can't breathe outside? The flip side of that is Denmark. What can we learn from a country? What can we reverse engineer from a country that does happiness so well? They're number one in the world happiness rankings. They're number one. And the answer is actually pretty simple. In Denmark, jumping back to the hierarchy here. So in Denmark, they're born on level 3. Love and belonging. What's amazing about Denmark is, whether they knew it or not, and I still need to talk to some Danish scientists about this, is for most of human civilization, we started on the first rung on stating our physiological needs, procreating and dying, right? Then a lot of societies kind of got that taken care of. We've got basic needs our government provides, and we got kind of one rung up on the ladder. Well, the Danes got up to the third rung of the hierarchy of needs. They got to love and belonging, and they thought, how can we offer this to everybody? What's kind of the social safety net that we can all just kind of have a leg up on happiness when we're born? So they thought about this in the 1960s, and they invented this concept called the co-housing community, where they realized that they saw the Americans building bigger houses and taller white picket fences in the suburbs and thought, why? What's the point? What's the point of having a bigger lawn and a bigger house if you're not filling it with people. Um, an empty ivory tower, great for you guys, but we're gonna take a different approach. We're going to push our houses closer together. Better yet, we're going to eat together and play together and learn and grow together. Our kids are going to play together every day. It's not just about like we have one playground in the condo complex. We have that here, but in co-housing communities, they eat together every day. So if you think about the difference in the evening routine, my evening routine versus my equivalent in Denmark 2 years ago. I come home, I've made a lot of money that day, great. But I come home, my roommates aren't home, I don't even like one of them, and I pop a beer, I throw The Witcher 3 into my Xbox, and I play myself into a stupor. That was pretty average. Some days I would come home and I'd just go drinking with friends, but again, there's alcohol involved, right? Well, in Denmark, that you come home and you go out your back door and there are 100 people who care about you. Oh, I had such an awful day. Guys, oh my God, Chris had a bad day. Let's talk about it. What's for dinner tonight? Oh, Caitlin made lasagna. Oh, I love Caitlin's lasagna. What happened when I got home? I threw something from Trader Joe's in the microwave, right? So it seems like such a minute thing, but you expand that across even just a year. Like a year out of college, that's all it took for me to be diagnosed with clinical depression. When you're not regularly in tune with your mental needs, like sure, we eat every day, we drink every day, but if we're not in tune with our emotional needs every day, our happiness needs, then it's easy to slip into depression. And I'm not at all surprised when I go back and I read our skyrocketing depression rates. I'm not at all surprised, but I'm still doing everything I can to stem it. So, yeah, there it is again. That's my mission.
So, Chris, we're already a little bit over time, so I need to wrap this up. But if you can give us a short, and this may be a hard question to answer, but like parting advice from someone who's spent time studying happiness. This is your thing. You're the expert. What advice could we take away, or what could we do to become a little bit more like our baseline of happiness? What could we do to move that a little bit higher, become a little bit happier in our day-to-day lives?
Yeah, think of building happiness like going to the gym, and think of your happiness like your energy levels. If you are a little bit low on energy throughout the week, you can continue drinking caffeine, and yeah, you'll feel perked up again. But how long does caffeine really last? You can't just rely on caffeine for months, years, and decades, or it just has a rate of diminishing returns. And pleasures are the same way, right? I was depressed because I relied on Xbox and alcohol and video games and just Coca-Cola, these pleasures, these temporary highs to make me happy. But just like caffeine, they're only temporary. So go through life with that mindset that, yeah, the pleasures are great and they'll get you that little spike, but you got to also work out your happiness, right? Go to the gym to stay physically healthy. Do happiness building activities to stay mentally healthy.
Thank you so much, Chris. This was fantastic. Really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, can I have 15 seconds to blatantly plug my book? Is that okay?
Go for it.
Okay, thanks. So it's called The Millennial's Guide to Making Happiness. It's on Amazon and Kindle. And I also sell personalized and signed copies off of my website. My website is Chris Butsch, ChrisButsch.com. And in fact, I'll throw it in the chat window right now. And I'll also throw the Amazon listing in there. Copy that. Go, technology. And there they are. Guys, I'd be so thrilled and honored to have you guys join me in the happiness revolution that I'm trying to start in America. And for the rest of the world. We have the power to build our happiness. It's not hard at all. I did it. I feel phenomenal because of it. And it will change your life. So help me to help you. And find me on Facebook. I do Twitter sometimes. I'm happy to talk to anyone on Facebook anytime. I don't do Instagram. There's a reason for that. It's actually in the book. And thank you guys so much for listening. It's been such a pleasure. And Hannah, thank you so much for organizing.
Yeah, not a problem. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.